Resident Evil is a franchise that's been going on for over 30 years now. From the original back on PlayStation 1 all the way to the current day, the series has had some legendary titles like Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 4 being some of the best in the series, and also some bad games like Umbrella Corporations and Operation Raccoon City being some of the worst in the franchise. Though I've never played them myself, I know a lot of people don't like to talk about them. I've personally been a fan of Resident Evil, but I've never really dipped my toes into the series until Resident Evil 7 came out, and I enjoyed my time with the game. I've also played Resident Evil 2 and 4's remakes, and I just recently played Resident Evil 5 and 6 with my good friend Zabyriths on Twitch to experience those games for the first time. With the series making a comeback, I wanted to cover the newest game in the series, Resident Evil 9 Requiem, and see if it lives up to the legendary games of the series, or if it's a game best forgotten about. So with all that said, let's talk about Resident Evil 9 Requiem, its story, its gameplay, and if it's worth your time. Now before we dive into this video, the game hasn't been out for very long, and I do plan on talking about the story. So if you want to experience the game for yourself and don't want anything spoiled for you, I highly recommend getting the game first and playing through it before watching this video, though I will leave a timestamp with a time for you to skip to so that you don't have to worry about the story being spoiled for you and you guys can experience that if you wish. Though I will mention that there will be some light spoilers due to visuals in the gameplay side when I talk about it, so just be warned there. With all that said, let's dive right in.
Resident Evil.
Meet Grace Ashcroft, an FBI analyst tasked to investigate some of the mysterious deaths that have been happening to some of the survivors of Raccoon City, where the T-Virus infected the city back in the original games. She's been assigned to inspect the most recent death that has happened at the Wynwood Hotel, a location that has her traumatized due to her mother Alyssa Ashcroft dying in that hotel 8 years ago. As she explores the hotel, she finds that someone has been stalking her as photos litter one of the beds. After finding a picture of her from 8 years ago in the hotel, Grace reminisces on the day of her mother's passing and remembers that she hid something behind a frame in the main hall, before saying hello to the edge of a machete in the hotel catching fire. Rushing back down to grab the file, Grace finds a data disk inside, and before she can do anything with the disk, she is attacked by an officer at the scene who has been turned into a zombie. After rushing her way to the top of the hotel, she runs into Victor Gideon, an ex-Umbrella scientist who says that Grace is the chosen one, and immediately attacks her and abducts her. At the same time, a returning Leon Kennedy, now working for the Division of Security Operations, DSO for short, is also investigating the mysterious deaths, as they too are experiencing the same symptoms the victims are. He's then pointed to the Wynwood Hotel and starts to head there in a very expensive Porsche Cayenne GTS. Damn, Leon's spending his money well, it seems. But hey, if I survived multiple zombie outbreaks and saved the president's daughter, I'd better be paid well too and get a vehicle like that. Though I'd prefer a Toyota Camry, but anyways. As Leon makes his way to the hotel, he finds Victor in the middle of kidnapping Grace. Victor's able to escape Leon by firing a dart gun at a few civilians, causing them to immediately turn into zombies and distract Leon. A little while later, Grace wakes up to find herself strapped to her bed with a needle in her arm, taking blood from her. She manages to escape captivity and tries to make her way out of where she is while running into a creature known as the Girl. This creature chases Grace around but can't go after Grace when she's in a lit room as light burns the creature. After a little puzzle work and avoiding the creature, Grace is able to make it to the main hall right as Leon is there to save her from being killed by the Girl. Leon gets a tip from a returning Sherry Birkins, who is not married to Jake from Resident Evil 6, I thought that's where they were going with that, but is Leon's mission control and is also showing symptoms of the illness. She tells Leon to go to the Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Center as that's where Victor resides. Upon reaching the hospital, Leon notices that the hospital staff and the patients have been infected as Leon has to fight his way around the hospital, where he then runs into Grace being attacked from earlier. Leon fends off the creature and hands Grace a weapon to defend herself before they are separated once again due to Victor locking down the hospital. Leon then runs into Victor once again and attempts to take him down, but fails and gets captured. Wandering around the hospital, Grace runs into a blind girl named Emily who is locked up in a high-level security room. And after a few puzzles and avoiding multiple zombies, Grace is able to free Emily and they both attempt to escape, but before they could make it to the exit, the girl creature from earlier snatches Emily and Grace has to go after her. Waking up from his little snooze, Leon awakens to find Victor questioning him while admiring his perfectly good looks for a guy in his 50s. But Leon doesn't like the company as he breaks free from captivity and roams the hospital to find a computer with information of something called Elpis, and that Grace is somehow related to Elpis. Jumping back over to Grace, she finds that Emily has been taken down to a holding cell underneath the hospital, and has to manage her way around the facility to find 3 joint plugs in order to free Emily. After freeing her, they both make their way back to the main hospital, but not before the girl returns and attempts to attack them. Thankfully, the elevator they use to get to the top loses its wires, causing the girl to lose her arm, and Grace almost losing her leg in a moment that had me personally wince, as I would be the same exact way. Grace and Emily finally make it out of the hospital to find a pilot named Harry in his helicopter by the airfield. Harry states that he can fly them all out of here, but the keys are inside a nearby building, and he's not really capable of getting them in a fast manner. So Grace leaves Emily with Harry as she goes to find the keys. After obtaining the keys and learning a bit about Elpis thanks to Victor calling someone in the building, Grace barely manages to escape the building before it becomes flooded with blood, making you feel like you're watching the Iron Lung movie. She makes it back to Harry and Emily as more zombies approach and they attempt to escape. But in the midst of them escaping, they lose control of the helicopter and crash by the chapel, killing Harry in the process and wounding Emily. Leon sees the commotion happen and defends the girls long enough to get them into the chapel and tells them to keep moving down the chapel as he fends off more zombies. Making it deeper into the chapel, Grace lays Emily down to rest inside the storage bay while also keeping her locked in due to the girl creature returning to hunt the two down. Grace finds that she can open the roof and permanently defeat the monster with the light from outside, and so after releasing a few hatches, she opens the roof and fires a shot at the girl, finally taking her down. With the threat finally gone, Grace rushes back to Emily but is too late as Emily starts to mutate, and before Grace gets killed by her, Leon shows up to put Emily down. With Emily defeated, Grace feels devastated over all the things going on and decides to leave Leon to go with Victor and this Wesker wannabe known as Zeno, who works with the Connections. Think of the Connections like a version of the Patriots from Metal Gear. They have power in places like the US government and want to create bioweapons to sell them for a pretty penny. Leon and Sherry are able to track down the 3 to the quarantine ruins of Raccoon City, and after exploring the ruins and saying hello to a giant spider, Leon finds a camp with some BSAA gear and decides to use it to go further into the city. It's here where Leon and Victor have a crazy bike chase that rivals the scene from Vendetta, though with less civilian casualties. After a wacky chase down a ruined highway, Leon is able to shoot Victor's bike, causing him to fall off the road and explode, allowing him to continue his search for Grace. Leon then makes his way deeper into Raccoon City, making it all the way to an old and run-down police station from RE2 full of callbacks and nostalgia. Continuing through the police station, Leon finds Zeno and Grace as Zeno mentions to Grace that Emily is a clone of her in hopes to unlock Elpis. You see, because of the virus outbreak in Raccoon City, Umbrella sent a missile to erase the outbreak going on. But besides erasing the zombies, the missile was also used to hide Elpis from the public eye. Elpis is locked behind a computer deep under Raccoon City, and if anyone tries to guess the password and gets it wrong, the whole thing will fall apart, causing Elpis to be lost. Zeno believes that Elpis is a virus created by Spencer with the power to control human consciousness, and attempts to have Grace tell him the password before she falls to the ground trauma dumped. Before Leon could land a hit on Zeno, Zeno summons a very familiar tyrant from RA2 and is forced to deal with him like we did back in the day.
I still love it. I still love the fact that you...
After escaping the police station and taking down the tyrant once again, Leon makes it to a rundown orphanage which holds an underground facility called the Ark, where Elpis resides. After locating Zeno and Grace again, Leon is swarmed by members of the BSAA trying to take Elpis for themselves, or at least I think that's what they are doing. But Leon makes quick work of them and this legendary soldier fella. I'll let you guess who that could be. Leon finally catches up to Zeno and Grace and is barely able to escape with Grace for the time being, but Leon's illness starts to catch up to him as he starts to feel too weak and passes out. After a little time resting, Leon wakes up as Grace watches over him and they both try to make it back to Zeno to hopefully destroy Elpis. Grace tries to help Leon by opening the path for him, and finds a computer where she pops in the disk that her mother left behind at the beginning of the game. She learns that she was an orphan raised by Spencer to make up for all the evil deeds he caused, and entrusts Alyssa to take care of Grace, calling her his final hope. Grace then rushes back to Leon and confronts Zeno at Elpis's chamber, and here you can choose to release Elpis or destroy it. Destroying Elpis gives you the bad ending where Elpis falls apart, and it kills Leon in the process. But releasing Elpis has Zeno take a dose of Elpis and injects himself with it, before Grace could tell him that Elpis was an antivirus. Victor then returns as Zeno loses his powers and claims that he will continue Spencer's legacy by taking control of Elpis and upend the world order. Victor then kills Zeno and wounds Grace, but not before she is able to give Leon the antivirus, healing him immediately from his illness and bringing him back from the brink of death. Victor activates the self-destruction mode on Elpis and attempts to take down Leon, but Leon powers through and kills Victor for good. With both Leon and Grace trapped inside the Ark, it seems like they won't be able to escape, but then some soldiers under the command of Chris Redfield rope down to say that they've got a message for Leon. Probably Chris asking if Leon married Claire to continue the Redfield bloodline. I see you putting a ring on your finger there. But anyways, Grace finds out from Leon that he didn't hit any of Emily's vitals and is able to rescue and cure her. Sometime later down the line, Grace ends up adopting Emily, and Sherry is also cured from the virus as well. While at the same time, a few soldiers eliminate the remaining BSA forces to retrieve their objective, obviously sequel baiting or to be answered in the later DLCs down the line. The story is honestly a great time from beginning to end, and I think it does an amazing job keeping the player interested, especially if you're a fan of the series. But with the story also comes some fun gameplay options, and also ways to experience the game. For this game, you play as both Grace and Leon as you take control of them during certain times in the story. Grace's sections are more horror and puzzle focused, while Leon's sections are more focused on the action and still having a little bit of horror and puzzles to solve. By puzzles I mean more like finding a crank to open a door or a battery to open a gate, etc. You can kind of think of Grace's sections like how Resident Evil 7 and 8 are played, and Leon's sections are more like Resident Evil 2 and 4's, remakes versions. If you like both of these styles of play, then I think this is an amazing game for you. And both characters have about the same amount of playtime too. Leon and Grace share almost the same amount of screen time, and from my experience, I don't think there was any sections that dragged on for too long. With Grace not being much of a fighter, you'll have to play smart with how you handle situations, like how if you'll need a knife to defend yourself from a zombie trying to bite you, or if you should use some ammo in case you need it for later. This also is further pushed with the return of the storage box. Just like in RE7, your inventory is very short, so putting items that you don't need for the time being is one way to manage the areas that you explore. You're able to increase your inventory as you progress through Grace's sections, and the game does a decent job giving you healing items and ammo. Plus later on, you'll be able to craft certain items that you need by using this blood collector thing. As you go around areas as Grace, you'll notice that you can collect blood with a blood collector, which can be used to make a range of items such as ammo, healing items, knives, and even permanent boosters to your health or increase the damage of your guns. That is, of course, if you have the blueprints to craft these items. As you progress, you'll find these locations that you'll need to put items in, and as you analyze them, you'll have to do a simple puzzle to unlock the blueprints. There's only a handful of these in the game, and solving one puzzle opens up a good chunk of the crafting list, so you'll not have to worry much about overplaying the minigame. Though I do want to know how Grace can make bullets with scrap and a pool of blood. I guess the blood is the gunpowder or something? I don't know. There are other parts of Grace's story where she's being hunted down by a big creature, and you have to avoid this creature by staying in lit areas. Because this creature can't be killed, you have to sneak around certain areas in order to progress the story, such as moving a cart to a wall in order to get a screwdriver without making much noise, or throwing glass bottles to temporarily distract the creature. These parts of the game do an amazing job in keeping the suspense going for Grace's sections. Another note to add is the amount of times you can save depending on your difficulty. When playing as Grace, you'll be able to save your progress by visiting these typewriters found in designated safe areas. In casual or standard mode, you can save your game as many times as you'd like, but on standard classic mode, you'll have to find these ribbons to save your game just like how the originals were. I'm not sure if it's the same way on Insanity mode, which unlocks after beating the game the first time, but for classic players, it's nice that they give you the option. Switching over to Leon, you're given an inventory case like in Resident Evil 4, and you have to organize your inventory in order to make space for items and weapons. I say you have to organize, but for my playthrough I rarely ever needed to. My case was scattered with many different weapons and items all over the place, and I would still have space for different items. But if you don't want to take the time to sort your items, the game has an auto sort option for you to use if you don't feel like playing Tetris with your inventory. A nifty mechanic that I'm glad they brought back from Resident Evil 4's remake. Because of Leon having more action sequences, you'll be facing off against more zombies and having many different weapons to deal with these zombies, like your standard pistols, your machine guns, shotguns, rifles, grenades, and this beauty of a weapon, the hatchet. With the hatchet, you'll be able to swing at enemies with a light attack or a heavy attack that can knock foes down temporarily. If you're able to knock a foe down via guns, hatchets, or a good melee kick, you'll sometimes be able to follow up with a hatchet attack that can instantly kill an enemy. Alongside dealing damage, you can also use the hatchet to parry enemy attacks like in Resident Evil 4's remake. If you time the moment an attack is going to hit you and you pull out your hatchet, you'll be able to parry your foe's attacks. And if you time it perfectly, you get this perfect parry that leaves an enemy exposed to a follow-up melee strike, and it just makes a sound that's so good to hear. Just listen to when you pull off a perfect parry. God, that feels good. You can also parry almost anything too, such as zombie grabs, throwables, and even explosives and vehicles, which I didn't know, and I wish I had this ability back in Resident Evil 6. The hatchet does have a durability meter, but instead of having to repair your hatchet at a buy station, Leon is able to sharpen his hatchet at any time, making the hatchet a crazy good weapon. You can also do gun finishers in the game too. If you time your attack at the same time an enemy is attacking you, Leon will do a close-up animation of him shooting the enemies in the face. And these are fun to pull off too. They caught me off guard when I pulled them off the first time, but I love seeing these when they happen too. But for me, I love hearing the hatchet's perfect parry. One more parry for the road. With Leon using a case for his inventory, Leon isn't able to store any of his items in a storage box, but he is able to buy weapons and items at this crate later on in the story. You can also sell your gear and upgrade your weapons, giving them sights, extended mags, stocks, and charms that you can find throughout the game, or by unlocking them from the special weapons menu. Charms can give you different abilities, and some can only be put on certain weapons, but once you have one, you'll always have it for future playthroughs. Leon gets money in this game by having this wrist tracker that tracks the amount of enemies he's killed. You can also pick up trackers in the game ranging from common points to legendary points as well. On the one hand, having a tracker that counts the amount of things you killed and pays you for it is a neat thing to have for when you're shooting at zombies. But on the other hand, this tracker works for anything. Meaning that if Leon wanted to John Wick his way against a few humans, he could totally do so and get paid for it. Apart from the different gameplays, one thing that caught my eye and some of the things I gotta give Capcom praise for is the attention to detail in this game. From the posters and files that you can find throughout the game, to all the different scenes and animations. I noticed this when I was figuring out a puzzle during Grace's section early in the game. You're supposed to figure out this puzzle by using a pencil on a notebook and sketching the page revealing a code. But on the other side of the map, you can find a picture with the code for the puzzle, and if you remember the code, you can get the items inside skipping the pencil and note section, and I love that attention to detail. Another big thing is the different ways characters react to situations. With Grace, she's more shaky when it comes to her actions, and it shows with her firing and holding her weapons. But with Leon, you can see that he has more control and more trigger discipline when it comes to his animations. You're also able to change your camera settings from first person view to third person for both Grace and Leon's campaigns. Depending on your view can change how the game will play out for you. For example, during Grace's sections, if you're playing in first person mode, you can see all the horror up close as they happen, but if you play her sections in third person, the developers added small scenarios where Grace will trip up on herself as she runs in order to keep the suspense going. The game recommends you play first person as Grace as she's focused around more of the in-your-face horror, and third person for Leon for all the action sequences. For my playthrough, I played in full first person, as I really liked the first person in your face action that RE7 brought, and ran with that for the whole time. But I could safely say that both ways are fantastic and great additions to the game. I do wish that this game had VR support like in Resident Evil 7, as I feel like the game's scares and action bits would have landed more if they had that at launch. But as the game is now, there isn't any VR support, and from what I know, they haven't announced any VR support patches to the game. But only time will tell, since Resident Evil Village didn't launch with VR support, but after a little while they added it into the game. As a game, I think this is an amazing sequel to the Resident Evil franchise, especially if you're a fan of Resident Evil 7, 8, and the remakes. Though I wouldn't recommend 9 be your first game into the series. I'd actually recommend 2 and 4, as those are really good games to start from, especially from the remakes if you want to jump into this afterwards. You can play Resident Evil 7 and 8 to understand the survival horror side of the gameplay, but I don't think it really matters, as it really doesn't add too much to the story personally, outside of maybe a handful of things. But ultimately, a solid entry into the Resident Evil franchise. Either way, Resident Evil 9 is a great time, and I believe this game is worth every cent. I played this game on my PS5, and as of writing this video, I'm in the middle of my third playthrough of this game, getting all the additional side stuff to unlock more of the fun toys for future playthroughs. I haven't really done that before in a Resident Evil game, but 9 is so good that I have to go back and replay it again and again. Great job, Capcom. You've made a banger with Resident Evil 9, and I'm excited to see more games from them, as it looks like they have some solid games coming out later on this year as well. Maybe Capcom will sweep at the Game Awards this year. I don't know, possible. But what do you all think? Have you guys played Resident Evil 9 yet? Do your thoughts line up with mine? Let me know down in the comments down below, and also tell me what your favorite part was in this video. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, and also subscribe to the channel to keep up with further videos in the future. Thank you guys again so much for stopping by. Hope you guys have a fantastic night, day, wherever you guys are. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, everybody.